As cities across the United States buckle and burn under riots, and the Black Lives Matter movement seeks to disband police departments, Antifa affiliates riding alongside it aspire to destroy the state, police, military, and all those who run the quote-unquote American plantation. For those of you unfamiliar with Antifa, Just Saying explains. After more than a week of protests and riots, members of Minneapolis's city council say they are looking into abolishing the city's police department. If this shocks you, it shouldn't. If it doesn't scare you, it should. It should also be no surprise that Antifa was quick to capitalize on the fray in Minneapolis after the homicide of George Floyd, nor that the movement has support from elected officials in that city and others. Various modern incarnations of Antifa have been present in the Twin Cities since the 1980s. If you want to hear more about its history, you should follow the link in the show notes and listen to the episode or read the article I wrote back in 2018 explaining why people needed to be aware and wary of the alt movements, both right and left. Hello there, Just Sayers. I'm Allison Cardivold. Before we really delve in here, I just want to give a quick reminder to please follow the podcast on your favorite platform and follow me on social media, which now includes Parler. I just joined that this week because, frankly, Twitter shadow bans me and Facebook won't allow me to promote the articles and podcasts whenever there's a subject that they don't like. So I'm going to try and get the word out on another platform. So where do we begin? Adjectives are too plentiful to list. I guess distressing. We can start there. It has been a distressing week and a half here in the United States, upon the heels of a very, at least stressful, 3 months due to the lockdowns from COVID-19. And now, a tragedy in Minneapolis has been used to spark unrest across the entire country. It is my experience that well-meaning, good-hearted people are often taken advantage of by individuals and movements that have underlying nefarious purposes. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do today, is to provide some context and some information for people who are really upset, as they should be, by what took place in Minneapolis, and they want to do something. And you've got all this pent up stress, and you have all these well-meaning people who go out to the streets wanting to be heard and wanting to matter. And then mixed in amongst them, there are several other groups who really don't care about the same things that these good people care about. One of those groups is Antifa. The current form of Antifa operating in the United States is comprised of multiple autonomous left-wing groups loosely affiliated by their militant opposition to ideologies they believe to be right-wing. These include law enforcement, capitalism, and democracy. Make no mistake, Antifa is against all of these things. The movement's roots of targeting fascism and white supremacy are now secondary, since organized groups professing this doctrine are less prominent than they have been in the past. However, due to the public's visceral response to these groups, Antifa is still quick to label all its targets as such. Participants in this movement are predominantly communists, socialists, radical environmentalists, and anarchists. Today's Antifa and its founding anarchists are also adept at co-opting and infiltrating other far-left movements and even just left-leaning movements to create temporary alliances that advance their goals. As a result, the definition of their enemies has gotten broader and broader to accommodate each group's single identity issues. This broadening has helped legitimize the movement in the eyes of centric non-activists. It also made it easier for extremists to piggyback their less palatable goals onto the broader ones, at least for a while. Even though their final destination may not be the same, far-left extremists don't mind using others to help shift popular thinking a few stops further along their ideological track. For example, Antifa has intertwined with the Black Lives Matter movement since the Ferguson protests and riots in 2014. But that doesn't mean they are necessarily on board with its causes. Longtime anarchist, author, and strategist Tom Nomad, who believes that capitalism is not sustainable, says working with other extreme left causes presents challenges. On the anarchist podcast It's Going Down, Nomad said, quote, "When we engage in single-issue campaigns, the things that end up resulting from that are not the kinds of escalations that we hope for. What ends up happening is that the liberals compromise and we get left out on our own. And what we need to figure out as anarchists is how to break that dynamic." Unquote. This was a podcast he did about 2 years ago. And they have been learning and they have been preparing. You need to look no further than the past week's events to find examples of the groundwork that has been laid for the extreme left to achieve its goals. Even after nights of destructive riots, when President Trump announced, quote, "The United States of America will be designating Antifa as a terrorist organization," unquote, an elected official was quick to jump on the movement's defense in Minneapolis. Jeremy Ellison, a member of the Minneapolis City Council, said, quote, "I hereby declare officially my support of Antifa. Unless someone can prove to me Antifa is behind the burning of Black and immigrant-owned businesses in my ward, I'll keep focusing on stopping the white power terrorists. They are actually attacking us," unquote. He tweeted that on Sunday. In response, if you go to the thread that I have embedded in the article and scroll down, you will see multiple videos of protesters confronting Antifa members who are working to hijack peaceful protests in Minneapolis and other cities across the country. On Thursday, Attorney General Barr announced that the federal government had already made 51 arrests on federal crimes in connection with the violent riots. Jeremy's father, Keith Ellison, who is Minnesota's Attorney General, is now in charge of the prosecution of all 4 police officers involved in Floyd's death. But he does not see a clear connection, though, not with Antifa. Like his son, he has a history, if not affiliation, then at least a fascination with Antifa. In January of 2018, while a sitting Democratic congressman, Ellison posted a picture of himself holding the Anti-Fascist Handbook. The tweet that was later deleted read, quote, "At Moon Place Books, and I have just found the book that strikes fear in the heart of Donald Trump," unquote. The elder Edison has also spent time with a prominent member of Rose City Antifa, Luis Marquez, even taking pictures together. Just this week, Marquez tweeted a video of himself encouraging his comrades to not use abusive language on a racial front, so as to not divide the protesters, but to keep burning, to keep writing. He looked like he was smoking dope at the time that he was posting this. If it is still up, I will embed it in the article as well. And you can take a look for yourself at a leader of the leaderless Antifa movement. A principal feature of those gathered under this political umbrella is the group's desire to take what it calls direct action, using harassment and violence against those they oppose. Understand, Antifa does not believe in the right of free speech for those they target. Adherents feel that speech and ideas they find offensive should not be allowed any platform, and that violence is justified to deny access to those who would speak it. Andy Ngo is a journalist located in Portland. He covers, has been targeted, and has been attacked by Antifa. In fact, he has just filed the first ever lawsuit against Antifa. His lawyer says it's because they harass him constantly and follow him and threaten him, and he reports it to police there in Portland, and nothing is done. So the lawyer says they feel they must seek assistance elsewhere. Andy's been doing a lot of posting this week, showing a lot of videos. You can go to his Twitter account and see videos of Antifa in action across the country. In one of his posts, he linked a page from the Anarchist Worldwide website that lays out the goals of the, quote, USA Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement, unquote. Ngo recently tweeted, quote, "They make their agenda very clear. Floyd has nothing to do with the riots being incited and carried out by far-left extremists. They've long desired to lead uprisings to overthrow the American state. They've been empowered by the media and politicians," unquote. I'm embedding the image from this website into the article. Just in case you don't have time to go and look at it, I'm going to tell you what it says. Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement, 10 points of action. 1. Liberation will be won by any means necessary. 2. We will destroy the state, police, military, corporations, and all those who run the American plantation. Number 3 on their list. We will live with dignity in a world without prisons. 4. Systems of punishment will be abolished. There will be no law to enforce, no money to protect. 5. Revolutionary justice will be determined by those who are oppressed. 6. There will be no government. No person or group will have power over another. 7. Communities will make decisions about how they live and will make sure that everyone has what they need to live a dignified life. 8. Land is not property, it is alive, communal, and must be protected. 9. Alongside international comrades, we will destroy all borders for the free movement of people everywhere. 10. Militant networks will defend our revolutionary communities. Liberation begins where America dies. Again, this is the 10 points of action laid out by the Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement. This is what Antifa stands for. There's a step in there for each one of their different single issued groups. one for the extreme environmentalists, one for the comrade socialists, Marxists, communists. But make no mistake, they want to destroy America as you know it. That's what they stand for. That's what their goal is. And yet for the past several years, they have found, if not support, at least acceptance from many who consider themselves to be only moderately left-leaning, because they thought they were helping make Trump look bad. Antifa's latest incarnation denounces a hierarchical leadership and instead uses social media and the internet to organize small groups already familiar with one another. They call these affinity groups. You get together with some friends that you know and trust, and you bring them like a little cell. They also use these methods to spread the word beyond their ranks to encourage things they refer to as calls to action. While highlighting the May 31st looting of a Target store in Austin, which authorities now say was coordinated by Antifa over the internet, Austin's Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCowan said the protest and looting of Target in Austin that was done and organized by an Antifa webpage, and of course the surveillance that was provided over the internet identifying where law enforcement resources were staged, was done over Antifa's accounts. We are talking about violent extremists. They're anarchists. There's Antifa, but there are also criminals that are using this as an opportunity to exploit and to loot and hurt others. That's happened, unquote. That's how they roll. They organize something. They try and get a bigger crowd there. Then they slyly go in, break some windows, rile some people up, and set them loose. They're pawns and they don't even know it. Antifa's movement is purposely fragmented and decentralized. Its structure makes it hard for outsiders to infiltrate, and it helps keep organizers and those who aim to misbehave anonymous and free from reprisal. The first week of June, however, Project Veritas released an interview with an informant that supports reports that Antifa puts its recruits through a fairly rigorous screening process and teaches them how to maim adversaries and incite riots. I will also embed Veritas's video in the article, so you can go there and view it. www.justsaying.com. Go to the most recent article. At the top of it, there will be an embedded link. There's also the podcast page. You can go to it if you want to listen. Either place works. If you think that President Trump's announcement that he wants to have them declared a terrorist organization is spur of the moment, you're incorrect. He mentioned this back in 2018. So the federal government has been watching them, and it won't be surprising if they're able to roll them up, at least the most dominant ones, pretty quickly. During protests, members often employ the use of black bloc, which is a tactic, not an organization. By dressing all in black and wearing masks, the insurgents are easily identifiable as a group, but not as individuals. This is a long-standing practice that they have used for decades. In addition to covering groups like the Aryan Nations and Militia of Montana in the 1990s, I also ran across some of those who helped lay the foundation for this current movement, acting as anarchists and Antifa groups at the World Trade Organization riots in Seattle in 1999, and then also at the G20 in Pittsburgh. So I have witnessed their tactics at those events, and I've also noted changes in their approach over the past 19 years. And here's my personal opinion. They love to hide among peaceful protesters and blindside victims. They employ masterful manipulation tactics to incite violence in mob settings and unleash ruthless, guerrilla-style attacks that prey on the weak, the isolated, and the vulnerable. In my personal opinion, they are actually perfect examples of the fascists they claim to be fighting against. Watch some of the videos. They sneak up when people aren't looking and bash them in the head or poke them in the face and then run away. They supply bricks, rocks, bats, cans of paint, and send people out and incite. You won't see many of them actually doing the looting. They'll just break the windows so the looters can enter and skirt away. On a skateboard sometimes. That's a good weapon. You can skate in, use it to bash people or things, and skate away. They are long entrenched in traditionally liberal cities where they are the most tolerated and get the least amount of pushback. Portland, Oregon is a very prime example. Seattle, Minneapolis are also long-standing bastions of Antifa activity. Translated from the Greek, anarchy means without a leader. Ultimately, what pure anarchists want to achieve is a stateless society with horizontal consensus versus hierarchical leadership. Think about that. Is that where you want to live and raise your children? Since anarchists reject authority, there are many types of anarchism, ranging from ones that promote absolute individual liberty, which means if you have something I want and I can take it from you, I have every right to do so, to those that endorse more communist or socialist ideas. We got to share all your stuff. Antifa has provided shelter to all these people. Consensus can be hard to come by, but the one thing they do agree on is that the use of violence is acceptable. It is an acceptable step in getting to their end goals. The FBI says that any combination of the need for power, excitement, affiliation, purpose, importance, and achievement play into the personal needs people are trying to fill when they become violent extremists. Those who are emotionally upset after a stressful event may be vulnerable as well. Which, think about that. That currently describes a large segment of the population of the United States. After months of the pandemic lockdown and the loss of tens of millions of jobs, the people who are hardest hit by that are our poorest communities. The same communities who already feel marginalized by police forces that have a distrust of the community they're trying to serve, and vice versa. But that's not where Antifa lives. Antifa lives in the privileged suburbs. Antifa loves to recruit on college campuses. And often those doing the recruiting are professors, are doctoral students, people who are having trouble making their way in the outside real world, people who have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for degrees that they cannot use to be gainfully employed. These are the people that Antifa attracts and recruits. But these are not always who's really pulling the strings. The human need to belong runs deep and can be easily manipulated by those who are morally unencumbered. Leaders of extreme movements don't always share the same fanatic beliefs they inspire. Instead, for them, the movement, whatever the movement, is about procuring power. In this context, elitist, monetary sponsors of the Antifa and Black Lives Matter movements might view them as mere puppets on their strings as they facilitate revolution and then discard them. This would be much in the same way that Adolf Hitler used the SA or brown shirts to help him come to power. Keep in mind, when the brown shirts began to threaten Hitler's power, he had the SS carry out the Night of the Long Knives. Sounds bad, doesn't it? It is. On one night, Hitler had some 500 followers and opponents executed. One night. This was after they had done his bidding by harassing, rioting, and bullying an entire country into submission. People speak of shadowy leaders of Antifa, powerful ones. Make no mistake, someone is giving them the money to be professional protesters. Not a lot. They're not getting rich, but it's enough to get them city to city and let them fulfill their true calling. Remember, it's the followers who are usually really fanatical. The leaders are really, truly the manipulators. So these shadowy backers of groups like Antifa need to beware. They seem to fail to grasp that these so-called puppets already desperately want to cut those strings and turn on their marionettes. While one group wants to change how society runs, and another wants to just change who runs society, anarchists don't want there to be a society at all. They want to go back to just a very small communal level. How many people in this day and age do you think could survive that? So here's my last thoughts on this. Before supporting a movement, be careful that you understand its real long-term objectives. If you align with a movement just because it seems to afford you politically correct virtue signals, then don't be surprised by its sudden but inevitable betrayal. You can agree or disagree. I'm just saying. Hopefully the next time we get together, I will be able to bring you a more positive topic. But until then, be safe and God bless.